Hi, I'm Ben. I'm here to learn English.
And I'm Emma. I'm here to help.
Let's learn together.
Let's learn together. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Emma.
And I'm Ben. Today we're doing something a bit different. We're going to give you 10 practical tips for preparing for IELTS, but we'll frame everything as IELTS speaking practice.
Exactly. So instead of us lecturing, we'll ask each other real IELTS-style questions. Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. And we'll give strong, clear, easy-to-copy answers.
Think of this episode as two things at once, a list of tips and a speaking lesson. You can pause, repeat, steal phrases, and adjust them for your own answers.
Great. Let's jump in with Part 1 style warm-up questions. Ready?
Ready.
Part 1 question for you, Ben. When did you first start preparing for IELTS?
I started preparing about 3 months ago. At first, I didn't really have a plan. I was just watching random videos and doing a few sample tests. But after a couple of weeks, I realized I needed a more structured approach. So I made a weekly schedule and focused on one skill each day.
Nice. That already leads to tip number 1 without us saying tip number 1. The idea is start with a clear plan, not random practice.
Yeah, without a plan, you feel busy, but you're not improving efficiently.
Let me answer the same question in a slightly different way, because in IELTS, variety matters. When did you first start preparing for IELTS? I began preparing last summer, so roughly 6 months ago. At the start, I felt overwhelmed because there were so many resources. What helped me was choosing only 2 main materials, an official Cambridge book and one good online course, and then setting a realistic routine. That way, I didn't waste time jumping between sources.
Great. So if you're listening, notice phrases like, I felt overwhelmed. What helped me was setting a realistic routine. These are useful for your own answers.
Totally. Okay, part 1 question. Ben, do you prefer studying alone or with other people?
I usually prefer studying alone because I can control the pace. However, for speaking practice, I think studying with a partner is more effective. It forces you to think quickly and respond naturally, which is exactly what you need in the speaking test.
Great balance. You gave a preference, a reason, and then a contrast. That's a mini structure you can reuse. And it connects to another preparation tip. Practice speaking with real people, not only with yourself.
Yep, talking to the mirror helps a bit, but real conversation is different.
I'll add my answer too. Do you prefer studying alone or with others? I like a mix, actually. When I study alone, I can focus on grammar and vocabulary without distraction. But when I study with others, especially for speaking, I get feedback and I notice mistakes I wouldn't catch by myself. So I try to study alone during the week and then do group practice on weekends.
Nice. I like a mix, especially for speaking. I tried to, all very natural.
Another part 1 question. What do you find most difficult about IELTS?
For me, the hardest part is time management, especially in reading. Even when I understand the text, I sometimes spend too long on one question. So I've been training myself to move on quickly and come back later if needed.
Great. That's a strong answer because it's specific, and it introduces an important tip. Practice under timed conditions early, not just near the exam.
Exactly. IELTS is not only about English, it's also about strategy.
My turn. What do you find most difficult about IELTS? I used to struggle most with speaking part 2 because I didn't know how to organize my ideas quickly. I could speak, but my answers were messy. So I practiced using simple structures like past, present, future, or problem, solution, result, and that made my responses clearer.
Great example. You said used to, so you showed progress, which sounds confident. Also, those quick structures unlock a lot.
Okay, that was part 1 style warm-up. Now let's do a part 2 cue card. Ben, I'll give you one. Ready?
Go for it.
Describe a useful piece of advice you received when preparing for an important exam. You should say who gave you the advice, what the advice was, when you got it, and explain why it was useful.
All right, I'll take a moment to think. Okay, I'd like to talk about some advice I got from my older sister when I was preparing for IELTS. She took the test 2 years before me and got a pretty high score, so I trusted her experience. The advice she gave me was to stop trying to learn everything and instead focus on my weakest skills. She told me to do a diagnostic test first, identify my gaps, and then spend most of my time fixing those areas. I got this advice about 3 months before my exam, at a time when I was feeling stressed and kind of lost. I was studying a bit of everything, grammar one day, random listening the next day, but I wasn't improving much. After I followed her advice, I realized that my biggest problem was writing task organization and speaking fluency. So I built a plan around those two skills, and my progress became much faster. That advice was useful because it saved me time and it gave me direction. Instead of studying in an unfocused way, I had clear priorities. Also, it reduced my anxiety because I felt like I was doing something smart, not just working hard. So overall, it was a turning point in my preparation.
That was excellent. Super organized. You used time phrases, you explained feelings, and you gave it clear why. If you're listening, notice how Ben didn't try to sound fancy. He sounded clear. That's key for part 2.
Thanks. And if we translate that into a preparation tip, do a diagnostic test early, then target your weak points.
Exactly. That's one of the biggest differences between high scorers and low scorers.
Want to model a part 2 answer too?
Sure. Give me a cue card.
Describe a time you changed the way you studied to become more successful. You should say what you changed, why you changed it, when it happened, and how it helped you.
Okay, let me think. All right. I'm going to describe a time when I completely changed my study routine while preparing for IELTS. At the beginning, I was studying whenever I felt motivated, which meant some days I studied a lot and other days I did nothing. After about a month, I realized that this approach was too unstable, so I switched to a fixed schedule. What I changed was simple. I decided to study at the same time every day for 1 hour. I also divided the week by skill. For example, Monday was listening, Tuesday was reading, Wednesday was writing, Thursday was speaking, and Friday was review and vocabulary. I made this change because I noticed that consistency mattered more than intensity. It happened around 5 months ago. This new routine helped me in 2 main ways. First, I improved faster because I was training every skill regularly instead of forgetting them for long periods. Second, it lowered my stress because I didn't feel guilty about missing random sessions. I knew exactly what to do each day, so studying became a habit instead of a battle with motivation. So yes, changing to a structured routine definitely made me more successful.
Great. Very natural, and your 2 main ways line is a nice organizer.
Thanks. And the tip underneath that is consistency beats cramming.
So far, we've basically covered a few of the 10 tips already. Let's now move into part 3 style, more analytical questions, and we'll keep linking them to practical prep ideas.
Let's do it. Part 3 question, Ben. Why do you think some people improve their English quickly for IELTS while others don't?
I think the main reason is the difference between active and passive study. Some learners spend a lot of time reading about IELTS or watching videos, but they don't actually produce language. On the other hand, students who improve quickly usually practice actively. They write essays, they record themselves speaking, they review mistakes, and they repeat tasks until they get better. So I'd say improvement depends more on quality of practice than quantity.
Beautiful. Active versus passive study. That's huge. Prep tip hiding there. Don't just consume, produce. Write, speak, correct.
Exactly.
I'll answer two. Why do some people improve quickly? I agree with Ben, and I'd add that quick improvers usually track their progress. They don't just hope they're getting better, they measure it. For instance, they time their reading, they count how many mistakes they're making in writing, or they notice repeated speaking errors like tense problems. Once you can see your patterns, you can fix them.
Great addition. Tip: keep a mistake log or progress tracker.
Right. It can be a notebook, a spreadsheet, whatever. The point is to learn from your errors.
Part 3 question for you. Some people think you should learn lots of advanced vocabulary for IELTS. Do you agree?
Partly, but not completely. Advanced vocabulary can help, especially in writing and speaking, but it's only useful if you can use it accurately. I think it's better to learn high-frequency topic vocabulary and collocations, like take part in, raise awareness, a growing trend, rather than memorizing rare words. If you use simple words correctly and naturally, you can still get a high Ben score.
Nice. Clear opinion, balanced view. So tip: focus on useful vocabulary and collocations, not obscure words.
Exactly. And another small speaking tip, in part 3, it's good to say partly to some extent. I'd say it shows flexibility.
Let me add my view. Do you think advanced vocabulary is necessary? I don't think it's necessary in the sense of using very rare academic words. IELTS examiners are looking for range, yes, but they're also looking for precision. If a student tries to use a fancy word and uses it wrongly, it can lower their score. So I'd tell students to build vocabulary around common IELTS themes: education, technology, health, environment, and to practice using those words in sentences.
Great. Tip reinforced. Learn theme-based vocabulary and practice it in context.
Exactly.
And another small speaking tip, in part 3, it's good to say partly, to some extent. I'd say it shows flexibility.
Next part 3 question. How important is pronunciation compared to grammar in IELTS speaking?
I'd say both are important, but pronunciation often has a bigger impact on communication. You can make small grammar mistakes and still be understood, but if your pronunciation is unclear, the examiner may struggle to follow you. That's why I think students should practice things like word stress, sentence stress, and connected speech. Even a slight improvement can make your English sound more natural.
Awesome. So prep tip: work on pronunciation systematically, not just sounds, but rhythm and stress.
Right. And a practical way is shadowing. Listen to a short clip and repeat it with the same rhythm. My take. How important is pronunciation compared to grammar? I think pronunciation is like the delivery of your message, while grammar is the structure. If your delivery is clear, your message lands. I've seen students with basic grammar get band 7 because they sounded fluent and understandable. So I recommend recording yourself, listening back, and comparing to a native speaker model. It feels awkward, but it works.
Nice. Analogy. Tip: record yourself and review.
Yes, people avoid it because they hate hearing their voice, but it's one of the fastest ways to improve speaking.
Let's shift to something about test familiarity. Part 3 question. Why do you think it's important to practice with official IELTS materials?
Because official materials show you the real level and style of the exam. Some unofficial sources are either too easy or too hard, which can mislead you. If you practice with authentic tests, you learn the patterns. What kinds of distractors appear in listening, how reading questions are phrased, and what task 2 prompts usually look like.
Perfect. Tip: use official or high-quality realistic practice tests.
Right, quality over quantity again.
I'll add a little. It's also about confidence. When you repeatedly do real style tests, the actual exam feels familiar.
Exactly.
Okay, let's do another mini part 1 section because listeners can copy this for warm-up drills. I'll ask you fast part 1 questions connected to IELTS prep themes, and you answer briefly but well.
Go.
How often do you study English?
I study English almost every day, usually for about an hour. I try to keep it consistent, even if I'm busy, because small daily practice helps me improve more steadily than studying a lot once a week.
Do you like taking practice tests?
Yes, I do, but mainly because they help me understand my timing and my weak areas. I don't take them every day, though. I usually take a full practice test every 2 weeks and use the time in between to fix mistakes.
Great. You naturally inserted strategy. Next, what do you do when you don't understand a listening answer?
First, I replay the audio and try to catch the keywords around the gap. If I still don't get it, I check the transcript, underline the relevant sentence, and listen again. That way I learn not only the answer, but also how it was expressed.
Extremely useful. Tip, use transcripts actively and re-listen.
Yep, passive listening is like watching the gym from the outside. You need to lift the weights.
Love that metaphor.
All right, now I'll ask you a part 1 lightning round. Answer naturally.
Okay.
Do you prefer studying in the morning or evening?
I prefer studying in the evening because that's when I'm most relaxed. After work, I can focus better, and I feel like studying is a way to end my day productively.
What kind of English podcasts do you like?
I like podcasts that mix real conversation with learning points. If it's too academic, I get bored, but if there's useful vocabulary and a natural pace, I stay engaged.
How do you usually learn new words?
I learn new words by writing them in sentences related to my life. Then I try to use them in speaking practice the same week. If I don't use a word, I forget it quickly.
Great. Tip there, learn words through personal sentences and immediate use.
Exactly.
Okay, let's keep going with deeper part 3 discussion and cover the remaining tips more explicitly through questions.
Sure.
Part 3 question. Some students feel nervous speaking with an examiner. What are some good ways to reduce this anxiety?
One way is to simulate the test regularly. If you practice speaking with a partner in a timed exam-like setting, the real test feels less scary. Another way is to focus on communication, not perfection. The examiner isn't waiting for you to fail. They're just listening. If you accept that mistakes are normal, you relax. Also, basic things like breathing slowly and smiling can physically reduce stress.
Great. Tip, do mock speaking tests and train your mindset.
Exactly.
My view, I think routine helps too. On test day, if you've practiced a speaking warm-up, like answering part 1 questions for 5 minutes before entering, you'll feel like your brain is already in English mode.
Oh, that's a strong practical tip. Do a short English warm-up before the test.
Yes.
Part 3 question for you. How can students improve their IELTS writing efficiently?
I think the key is to stop writing without feedback. Many students write essay after essay, but never check what's wrong, so they repeat the same mistakes. An efficient approach is write one task, get feedback, maybe from a teacher, a study partner, or even a reliable checklist. Then rewrite it. Rewriting is where improvement happens. Also, students should study model answers to see how ideas are developed logically.
Excellent. Tip, feedback plus rewriting, not endless new essays.
Basically, don't practice the same mistake 10 times.
Totally. I'll add a quick personal example as another model answer style. When I started rewriting essays, I realized my introductions were too long. Fixing that one thing raised my score much more than writing 5 new essays.
Exactly.
Here's another part 3 question to touch on reading and listening. Why do you think some learners get stuck at the same band score for months?
Usually because they're practicing at the same level without pushing. Improvement needs challenge. If someone always does easy listening, They stay comfortable but don't grow. Another reason is not analyzing errors. If you don't know why the answer was wrong, was it vocabulary, distraction, or misreading the question, you can't fix it. So to move up, you need deliberate practice and reflection.
Great. Tip: increase difficulty gradually and analyze why you were wrong.
Exactly. Comfort doesn't create progress.
Okay, let's do a part 2 again, but this time we'll make it directly about the theme preparing for IELTS. It's also good for listeners to hear another long answer.
Perfect. Here's a cue card for you, Ben.
All right.
Describe a method you used to improve your English while preparing for IELTS. You should say what the method was, how you used it, why you chose it, and explain how effective it was.
Okay, I'll talk about a method I used for improving my speaking fluency. The method was called daily topic speaking. Basically, every day I picked one common IELTS theme, like travel, technology, or health, and I spoke about it for 2 minutes without stopping. How I used it was pretty simple. I wrote 3 Part 2 style questions for that theme, then I set a timer and recorded myself answering one of them. After that, I listened to the recording and noted down any pauses, repeated words, or grammar mistakes. I chose this method because I noticed that my main problem was hesitation. I wasn't lacking ideas, but I couldn't express them quickly. In terms of effectiveness, it helped a lot. After about 3 weeks, I felt more comfortable speaking continuously, and I also built a bank of ideas for common topics. Another benefit was that I learned to paraphrase on the spot. If I forgot a word, I got used to explaining it in another way instead of freezing. So overall, it was a very practical and effective method for me.
Great answer. Note that Ben explained the method, the steps, and the results. That bank of ideas line is super IELTS.
Thanks. Underneath that is a tip. Practice speaking daily with common IELTS themes and record yourself.
Yep,
Your turn. I'll give you a part 2 cue card.
let's do it.
Describe a time you had to stay motivated for a long-term goal. You should say what the goal was, what challenges you faced, what kept you motivated, and explain what you learned from the experience.
All right, let me think. Okay, I'd like to describe a time when I was preparing for IELTS over a long period and I needed to stay motivated. My goal was to reach band 7.5 because I wanted to apply for a postgraduate program abroad. The main challenge was that progress felt slow. Some weeks I improved, but other weeks I felt stuck, especially in writing. What kept me motivated was breaking the goal into small milestones. For example, I aimed to improve my writing Task 2 score from band 6 to band 6.5 first, rather than thinking only about 7.5 overall. I also tracked my improvements, like reducing grammar mistakes or writing faster outlines. Another thing that helped was studying with friends once a week. Their support made the process less lonely. From this experience, I learned that motivation doesn't always come naturally. Sometimes you have to create it by building routines, celebrating small wins, and reminding yourself why the goal matters. In the end, I achieved the score, and the long preparation taught me patience and discipline.
Nice. I love motivation doesn't always come naturally. Very human. Tip: set mini goals and celebrate progress.
Exactly. Long-term prep needs short-term wins.
Let's make sure we cover all 10 ideas clearly for listeners. We've mentioned planning, diagnostic tests, consistency, active practice, mistakes log, vocabulary in context, pronunciation and shadowing, official materials, feedback and rewriting, mock tests, and mindset. That's already more than 10, but we can consolidate.
Yeah, and in IELTS, repetition with variation helps memory. So let's reinforce them through a final part 3 style conversation. We'll each give our top tips in a natural way, like the examiners might ask you.
Great. Part 3 question. If a friend asked you for advice on preparing for IELTS, what would you tell them?
I'd probably give them a few main points. First, I'd tell them to start with a diagnostic test so they know where they stand. Then I'd encourage them to make a realistic weekly routine and stick to it because consistency is more effective than last-minute cramming. I'd also say they should use official materials, at least for practice tests, so they're training for the real exam. And finally, I'd remind them to review their mistakes carefully instead of just doing new tests every day.
That's a perfect Part 3 answer. Clear, organized, and practical.
Thanks. Your turn. If a friend asked you for advice, what would you say?
I'd tell them to focus on quality practice. For example, in speaking, they should record themselves and practice common topics daily. In writing, they should get feedback and rewrite essays, because rewriting improves structure and accuracy. I'd also advise them to build vocabulary by themes and learn collocations, not just single words. And maybe most importantly, I'd tell them not to panic about making mistakes. Progress comes from errors, as long as you notice them and fix them.
Lovely. That last line is very encouraging, and it sounds natural.
Confidence matters a lot in speaking.
Absolutely.
Let's do a short role play of a real IELTS speaking test for listeners. Ben, you'll be the candidate, I'll be the examiner. We'll do part 1, part 2, and part 3 quickly, and listeners can copy the style.
Okay, I'm ready.
Good afternoon. Can you tell me your full name, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Williams.
And where are you from?
I'm from a medium-sized city in the north of my country. It's not very famous internationally, but it's known for its friendly people and beautiful parks.
Let's talk about studying. Do you enjoy studying English?
Yes, I do. I enjoy it mainly because it opens up more opportunities for me, like studying abroad and communicating with people from different cultures. I also like the feeling of improvement when I learn new expressions and can use them naturally.
How do you usually study English?
I study in a few ways. During the week, I focus on skills like reading and listening using practice materials. And on weekends, I do longer speaking sessions with a partner. I also review my mistakes regularly, which helps me avoid repeating them.
Great. Now, part 2. Here is your topic. You have 1 minute to prepare. Describe a helpful tip you followed while preparing for IELTS.
Okay.
You may begin.
All right. One helpful tip I followed was to practice under timed conditions from the start. At first, I used to do reading and listening exercises without any time pressure because I just wanted to understand the questions. But I later realized that timing is part of the challenge. So I started setting a timer whenever I practiced. For reading, I gave myself 60 minutes for 3 passages, and I forced myself to move on if I got stuck. For listening, I practiced filling answers quickly and checking spelling fast. I followed this tip because I didn't want to be surprised on test day. It was effective because my speed improved gradually and I became calmer under pressure. Instead of panicking when time was running out, I already had experience managing it. So I think this tip made a big difference to my final performance.
Excellent. Now, part 3. Why do you think time management is a common problem for IELTS candidates?
I think it's common because many learners focus only on language ability and forget that the exam is also a skill-based test. If you're not used to reading quickly or making fast decisions, you can lose time even if your English is good. So I think time management needs specific training, not just more English study.
Great, Ben. Role play done.
If you're listening, notice the rhythm. Don't rush, but also don't speak too slowly. Just steady.
Yeah, fluency is basically calm speed.
Okay, we're near the end, so let's summarize the 10 tips in a natural conversational way, not as a list, but as a recap you can remember.
Right. Think of this as us talking to a student right after class.
So, if you're preparing for IELTS, start by checking your level with a diagnostic test, and then build a plan around your weakest areas.
Keep your routine consistent. Even one focused hour a day beats long, tiring weekend marathons.
Use good materials, preferably official ones, so your practice matches the real test.
Don't just take test after test. Review your mistakes, write them down, and learn what patterns you repeat.
For speaking, practice daily with common themes, record yourself and listen back.
And train pronunciation beyond individual sounds. Copy stress and rhythm through shadowing.
For writing, get feedback if possible and rewrite tasks. That's where your score rises.
Build vocabulary by topic with collocations, and practice using it in your own sentences.
Do mock speaking tests so the real exam feels normal, not scary.
And finally, stay motivated by setting mini goals and noticing progress. IELTS is a marathon, not a sprint.
There we go. 10 solid points wrapped inside real IELTS speaking practice.
Before we go, here's a small challenge for listeners. Pick one of today's questions and answer it out loud for 2 minutes. Record yourself. Then listen and ask, was I clear? Did I organize my ideas? Did I use some topic vocabulary?
If you do that once a day for a week, your speaking will jump.
All right, friends, that's it for today.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
See you next episode.
Bye, everyone.